All right, I think we will get going. So welcome and thank you everyone for joining us today. This webinar is part of our October webinar series. The next one, which will be our final one, is at 6 p.m. on October 20th, next Thursday night, where we will cover financial planning. No matter where you are in your investment journey, financial journey, having a well-documented plan can help protect you and your family, especially in challenging times like we're facing today, higher inflationary pressures, the market volatility, etc. Watch your emails for these, and please join us if those are topics that are top of your mind. A couple of quick items before we jump into today's main topic. We are recording this session, and we will be sending out a copy of this probably early next week. We have a lot to cover today, and although we would be glad to spend the next 3 hours answering your questions, we understand you have other things to do. So therefore, we will not be taking questions at the end. We invite you to reach out to our email, info@emerge360.com, or you feel free to give us a call at 1-833-EMERGE360. That's 1-833-EMERJ360. Oftentimes, those questions are specific to your particular situation, so giving us a quick call usually makes the most sense. Now, let's get to the business at hand this afternoon and cover 401k rollovers. First, I would like to introduce myself and Emerge 360. So my name is Brett Sibian. I'm the financial coach on Emerge 360. I've been at TrustPoint for about 4 years, came from the investment team, working with clients, focusing on the investment part of the relationship before moving over to the Emerge 360 team. Heather Jordan is the managing director of our department. She's also the certified financial planner, or CFP, on the team. She's also been at TrustPoint for about 4 years and came from our wealth management division, working with individuals on account management and working with them in financial planning capacities as well. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk about 401k industry statistics. There's a study that was conducted in 2021 that shows some pretty startling statistics when it comes to forgotten 401k accounts. We'll talk about rollovers and your options you have with those, benefits of rolling over, and then following up with how Emerge 360 could potentially help. So 401k industry statistics. So there was a study conducted in 2021, and it focused on younger baby boomers born in 1957 and 1964. And what they found is that those individuals held an average of about 12 jobs from the age of 18 to 54. Now, half of those jobs were kind of in those younger years, right? But the remaining half did happen in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on. So this study showed an estimated 24 million forgotten 401k accounts, and they also estimate that another 2.8 million are left behind on an annual basis. So when they determine what the potential account values of those are, it's about 1.53 trillion in 401k assets, which actually makes up about 20% of the 401k asset industry, right? So pretty crazy to think about all the 401ks that are forgotten about and adding up kind of what their values are, all of the forgotten money that is truly out there. Also, when they conducted this study, the average forgotten 401k balance was about $55,000. They take us through an example, which is for sure extreme, but based on that $55,000 balance, they estimated individuals could miss out on $700,000 in retirement savings due to a higher fee plan, whether that's investment options or administrative costs, and also poor asset allocation. So how you are invested within your 401k account. It goes through these 4 different variables when it comes to your 401k. So sorry for the, the shading isn't as noticeable, but the 2 highest lines we see here would be poorly allocated with low fees and poorly allocated with high fees, right? So a lot of this has to do with how you're allocated. Stocks, the stock market generally goes up over longer periods of time. And if you're not participating in that, your 401k balance is hurt. So again, a lot of different 401k plans are forgotten out there, a lot of money out there, and as a result, missing out on potential returns and the assistance of growing their 401k account. This is also an interesting statistic. So between 2010 and 2019, about 13% of 401k plans were defaulted to a money market fund, which is essentially cash, or a similar stable value fund, which is invested mainly in short-term fixed income securities. So when we look at the average annual account returns by these different asset classes, money market about 1% over this 9-year period, stable value fund a little over 2%, and then a well-allocated account, which essentially just being invested in the stock market, returned 9.2% annualized. So you can see where, a $50, $60, $70,000 forgotten 401k account over a 30-year period could lose out on hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Because they're not participating of that being invested in the market. So if you are one of the 24 million forgotten 401ks out there, there's a few different ways to go about trying to locate that. Contact your old employer would be a first step. If your employer has gone out of business or they got absorbed or bought by another company, maybe contact your old 401k provider. So the difference between here, your employer is where you work, the provider is where the account was administered and managed. So Fidelity, Vanguard are very common providers in the 401k industry, or look for an old 401k statement, which can be a little more challenging as we've gotten away from paper statements and have gone towards e-statements. But these are kind of the 3 different ways to help locate your 401k if you have lost it throughout the years. So what is a rollover? So by the IRS definition, a rollover occurs when you withdraw cash or other assets from one eligible retirement plan and contribute all or part of it to another eligible retirement plan. So when we talk about those retirement plans that are eligible for rollovers, 401k plans, 403b plans, which are probably the 2 most common when we talk about rollovers, but also money purchase plan, KEOs, and qualified retirement plans also fall into this category. So what are your options? We like to break it down into 3 different buckets. So first, you have the ability to leave it in your old 401k plan. Right. And we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of that, as well as these other options. So sometimes we do recommend this when we work with individuals. Roll into your new 401k or an IRA. This is what we usually would recommend to individuals, or withdraw, cash out your 401k assets, which we almost never recommend, right? And for various reasons that we'll get into. So option number 1, leave in your former employer's plan. So some of the advantages to this, familiar with investment choices, right? So maybe you worked there for 10, 20 years, you're comfortable with the investment process, you're comfortable with the investment options, you've been treated really well there. There's no issue with leaving it in the plan if it checks all those boxes. Potential penalty-free withdrawals that may be available. This is called the rule of 55. But you must have left your most recent job after the age of 55, right? And no longer be working there, where you wouldn't be penalized for taking an early distribution. So again, a little specific example, but for those that fall into the bucket, it might make sense to leave it in your old employer's plan. And then possible to delay RMDs if you're still employed at age 72. So if you're still working at age 72, you do not have to take a required minimum distribution, where you do if you're not working or if you have an IRA, and we'll get into that. Some disadvantages, potential change in providers, right? Your employer could be absorbed by another company, be sold off, go out of business, or just get another provider to administer the 401k account. And it's hard to kind of keep track of that if it happens a few times throughout your life. Right. So that's one of the disadvantages. Fees may increase if you're no longer an employee. So this is something that we encourage individuals to ask their old employer or their 401k provider if their fees will change, that they're no longer working there. Roth RMDs are required at age 72 if you're not employed, where they're not required in an IRA. And we'll get into that when we cover rollovers into IRAs. And another disadvantage potential may not allow for Roth conversions. Option number 2, roll into a new employer plan. So some of the advantages are simplicity, right? And consolidating of retirement assets into one location. Maybe you have 3, 4, 5 different 401ks out there. It's nice to kind of roll all that into one spot, so it's easier to keep track of. You're not getting 5 different statements from 5 different providers, potential cost savings, right? So that's always important to kind of go through that process. And then just like keeping it in your new employer, keeping it in your old employer plan, possible to delay RMDs if you're still employed at 72. So some disadvantages, expenses could be higher, right? So always want to be conscious of the costs, whether it's investment related costs or administrative costs within 401k plans. Roth RMD is required at age 72 if not employed, and they're not, just like if you keep it in your old plan, not required if you roll it into an IRA, and we'll talk about that. And similarly, may not allow for Roth conversions. Option number 3, roll your money into an IRA. So there are a lot of different type of advantages in doing this. So a big one, independence from your former employer, right? Maybe you don't want your own employer to have some of your retirement savings when you were working there. Greater investment flexibility and control. Sometimes, 401k investment options can be a little bit more limited. Potential to work with an advisor. So that's a big one. So 401k world is a little different. It's a little bit more strict when it comes to advice giving, where by law, a lot of 401k plans or administrators are not allowed to give advice to participants. So when you roll your money from a 401k to an IRA, you have now engaged in a more individualized service where you can go through financial planning and different investment related services. If you're 70 and a half, you may be able to make charitable IRA distributions from your IRA, right? So, if you take a $10,000 distribution from your traditional IRA, that's like earning $10,000 in income, you have the ability to make a tax-free distribution to a charity of your choice. So that's a big benefit when it comes to rolling your 401k into an IRA. Similarly to rolling into a new employer's plan, the consolidation of assets, right? The simplicity that comes with that, where you may be able to streamline the investment monitoring, right? All of your money is in one spot. We can now see from an allocation standpoint how you are allocated, distribution strategies and tax planning. So really just the flexible simplicity nature of being able to roll it into one area and working with all those funds together. No required minimum distributions from a Roth source. So what we see a lot, just for simple math, let's say you have, $100,000 401k, you're retiring, 50,000 is traditional monies, 50,000 is Roth monies. You can roll both of those buckets of money into an IRA, but they're separate IRAs. One's a traditional, one's a Roth. And you are not subject to RMDs with the Roth IRA. So if you want to leave that money to grow, right, you want to leave it to a beneficiary, it's the last, bucket that you want to touch. That is a great option. And then also traditional to Roth conversions might be allowed. So, this can be a very powerful strategy, especially in years when your income is down or when markets are down. So values have decreased, right? So when you want to do a Roth conversion, let's say you have $50,000 of traditional, you want to convert it to Roth, you have to now pay tax on those monies, right? Because traditional was pre-tax contributions. So it's like making an extra $50,000 in income for that year, right? So it can be a very powerful strategy, especially when it's a year when your income limits are down or when markets are down like we are today. Some of the disadvantages of doing this, borrowing money against your IRA is prohibited, where in 401k, that with most 401k plans, you have the ability to borrow against it. Again, it's not something we encourage people to do, but it is a flexible provision within 401ks. Required minimum distributions are mandatory, even if you're still employed, right? So in 401ks, if you're still employed at age 72, you do not have to take that required minimum distribution, where in an IRA, you have to. Penalty-free withdrawals are generally not available until age 59 and a half, right? Which for most of us, that's okay because we'll still be working. But when we talk about the rule of 55 and how that can be an advantage, on the flip side, it could be a disadvantage if you roll it into an IRA. And then there is a 5-year waiting period for tax-free withdrawals on Roth IRA earnings. Now, a lot of us aren't going to run into this if we've been saving Roth sources throughout our working career, but there is a 5-year waiting period for tax-free withdrawals on those Roth IRA earnings. Option 4, cash out. Now this is, something that we generally do not encourage people to do, but if there is an immediate need for cash, for whatever reason that may be, that is one of the advantages, and it has to be timely as well, right? You need the cash as you're leaving your employer. Disadvantages, a lot of them, you may have penalties and taxes, right? You most definitely will have penalty and taxes. You basically forfeit any future tax deferred growth, right? Because you're taking that money, it's now not invested in the market anymore. Those funds will probably not be available for retirement, especially if retirement is, a little ways off yet, right? Chances are you're going to spend that money if you take it as a distribution. And then lastly, distributions included in the current taxable income may result in taxation at a higher tax rate, right? So let's say you have a $50,000, traditional 401k, you cash it out, that's like receiving $50,000 in income that year, and it might bump you up another tax bracket where you're going to have to pay higher taxes in doing that. So a lot of disadvantages that we generally don't encourage individuals to partake in. And the next slide here shows a pretty cool example of what it means to take that distribution, the tax liability you have relative to if you would leave it in the plan and let it grow. So rolling over does not create a taxable event, okay, but a cash distribution usually does, plus tax penalties. So in this example, let's say you take a pre-tax distribution amount at age 40 of $50,000, you get a $50,000 401k, you leave work there and take it all as a cash distribution, estimated to pay about 25% in federal, state, and income taxes. Since you're not 59 and a half or aren't subject to the rule of 55, you're going to have an early withdrawal penalty of 10%. So your net distribution after all taxes are taken out is $32,500, where if it was invested in the stock market for 25 years until age 25, I think this is based on a 7% annualized return, you would have about $342,000. So a pretty powerful example of what it means to, not take a distribution a cash distribution when you leave your employer, and to really think about what makes most sense for you when it comes to rolling over to your new 401k plan or to an IRA or keeping it in the 401k plan. But it's very important to keep your money invested for your future because that's what it is supposed to be used for. So benefits of a rollover, a lot of this will be just kind of a review of the advantages and disadvantages we talked about, but rolling over to your new 401k or an IRA, right? Just simplicity, the money follows you where you go. So it's easier to keep track of, especially if you've changed jobs a lot. We've worked with participants that have had 3-4 jobs over the last, 10, 15 years. And they bring us 4 to 5 different account statements, and we try to, come up with a solution where it makes the most sense to consolidate them, whether it's in their new 401k plan or with an IRA. Avoid any unexpected provider changes. So this happens more than people think and is a big contributing factor to all those lost 401ks, the 24 million of them, because your former employer could easily change the 401k provider without, asking you about it, right? Or your former employer is acquired by another company or goes out of business, and then the 401k gets moved to a different provider in that capacity as well. So rolling over avoids any of those unexpected changes. And then potential cost savings administratively or investing related, right? A lot of times there's hidden fees within investment options. If you leave an employer plan, sometimes your fees go up because you're no longer participating in the plan. So we just want everyone to be conscious and ask the right questions when it comes to the fee conversation within their 401k plan. A rollover chart. So we're not going to cover each little area of this. You can Google this and get the chart for yourself and print it off. But one of the big ones that I would just want to touch on, and questions we get asked a lot of. So generally speaking, you have the ability to roll a traditional IRA into a qualified retirement plan like a 401k, but you cannot roll over a Roth IRA into a traditional 401k, right? So that is prohibited, and we get that question a lot. So that's kind of the one thing I want everyone to take away from this slide. But again, feel free to always reach out and ask us about, your personal situation if you think you fall into one of these scenarios. And again, you could just Google rollover chart, and you could find a lot of different resources with this as well. So what's needed when you want to make a rollover? So, a current statement of the account to be rolled over, rollover paperwork from your prior provider, and the account that it's being transferred into needs to be opened first. So there is a little bit of work on the back end of gathering statements, reaching out to your old provider, and then making sure the account it's being rolled into is opened, etc. But again, I think a lot of the benefits of rolling it into a new plan or an IRA, consolidating your assets for the simplicity nature, potentially saving on costs, far outweigh some of the front end work that needs to be done prior to rolling it over. So lastly, and we touched on this a little bit throughout the presentation, rolling over into an IRA, some of the benefits. So the big one is really working with someone in more of an advisor capacity, right? We talked about how 401k land is a little bit more strict when it comes to giving advice. Once you roll it into an IRA, you engage in that, advisor relationship. So you can, go into services like financial planning, investment management. So you can work with an advisor to really hone in on your allocation strategies, right? How it should change over time based on the goals that you have. You can't contribute to a 401k you're no longer participating in, right? So let's say, you have $100,000 401k, you now went to a new employer that maybe you work for, the government, you have a pension program, or you're working for an employer that just doesn't have a retirement plan. You can't contribute to your old 401k plan. But once you roll it into an IRA, you have the ability to contribute in different capacities. Option to convert traditional dollars to Roths, right? So we talked about how that's been a very popular option for individuals in 2022 as markets have came down, right? Being able to convert those to after-tax dollars and benefit from that tax-free growth and future tax-free distributions. And really, to sum it all up, just better communication, right? Being able to work with an advisor, have that one-on-one relationship, and really work with that person that benefits the future of your financial plan. So how can Emerge 360 help? A lot of what we talked about will tie into Emerge 360 services. So we do investment management for accounts $50,000 and up. So this can be a traditional or Roth IRA, 401k rollovers from previous employers, and also individual and joint accounts. So taxable accounts from built up cash savings, inheritances, etc. A big part of this service is the financial planning and goal setting with a certified financial planner. So Heather Jordan, the managing director, is the CFP on our team and works with our clients in that capacity to really help answer some of those most basic questions that people have, right? When can I retire? How long will my money last? There's some debt management that's incorporated in this as well, right? Should I increase my mortgage payments to help pay that off quicker, or should I invest that money today hoping to earn a higher return than the interest I'm paying on my mortgage, right? So all of those questions can be embedded within the financial planning process. And this last slide here just covers a little bit more in depth about the financial planning process. So we utilize a financial planning software called Money Guide Pro to create a comprehensive financial plan to, again, help with a lot of these different questions or areas that people are interested in. So goal setting, right? I, want to pay off my house by, X year. I want to travel once a year. I want to have a second home in X state. What all needs to happen today to help me achieve those goals? It's based, a lot of it's based around saving and asset allocation, right? What needs to be done today to help benefit that future goal? And then withdrawal strategies, right? If you have different pockets of money, you have traditional money, Roth money, a taxable account, what makes most sense to pull from in a certain situation, right? Depending on maybe your tax bracket, depending on how markets have performed and what your tax situation is. So again, to sum it all up, our planning process really helps answer those most basic questions and helps with your goals and what they are in retirement and help you achieve those goals, right? So how long will my money last is a big one. When can I retire is a big one. When should I take Social Security is a very common one, right? So you can take Social Security at age 62, but there are some benefits to delaying, and there's a lot of different factors that go into that. But in our financial planning process, we go through that process to make sure that we optimize what makes the most sense in when taking Social Security. And again, how should I prioritize my debt payments is just another example. So again, the financial planning process within Emerge 360 is a very big part of the service that we do, as well as the investment management, right? Managing the assets, managing the account, and working with you in that capacity as well. So how can Emerge 360 help? Here's a couple, resources for individuals with these QR codes. You can just put your phone up to, and it should lead us to the website. But our website is emerge360.com. And you can also schedule a meeting with us, right? Whether it's on Zoom or in person. So I would encourage anyone to do that if they have any questions about rolling over or anything like that. So thank you for joining us today. Again, if you want to learn more about Emerge 360, or how we can help, check out our website, schedule a meeting with us. And of course, you can always, reach out to us via email, which is info@emerge360.com, or call 1-833-EMERGE360 with your specific questions. We're ready to help. And ready to meet with you if that's something that you want to do. So remember to watch for your emails and get signed up for our future webinars. Again, our last one will be on October 20th, next Thursday night at 6 p.m. But I hope everyone enjoyed our webinar today. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the week.